Welcome back to The Lead, continuing with our world lead and the crisis in Iraq. This shocking ISIS propaganda video posted on Facebook, which we'll talk about more in a moment, only emphasizes the terror that can be incited locally and around the world by these jihadist groups. A new study by the RAND Corporation's International Security and Defense Policy Center shows that the number of jihadist groups worldwide is up nearly 60% in just 3 years. Is ISIS leading the pack? And joining me now is Seth Jones, Acting Director for the RAND Corporation's International Security and Defense Policy Center. Seth, thanks for being here. I want to start with these propaganda videos on Facebook posted by an ISIS fighter. It shows the interrogation of 5 captured men in Iraq and the aftermath of the execution of one of them. By the accent of the man doing the interrogating, it seems he's likely a foreign fighter, maybe Tunisian. What sort of message are ISIS fighters trying to send? What can we take away from these videos, or is it only intended for an Iraqi audience?
No, I think what they're intending this, and they've been doing this for some time, for multiple audiences. There's an international audience. ISIS is increasingly getting a number of foreign fighters. So by putting these out on Facebook, they have Twitter accounts, they have internet sites that they use. It's partly a means of attracting individuals to come fight the good war, the good jihad in Iraq and Syria, for that matter. The other is an internal audience within Iraq to demonstrate almost a domino sense that they've taken cities like Mosul and they're on their way to Baghdad.
Now, you have a study of the rise of jihadist fighters, and you point out in your study that in 2013, when ISIS was still affiliated with al-Qaeda, it led all of these al-Qaeda-affiliated groups in attacks, more than al-Shabaab, al-Nusra Front, more than AQAP, al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. How did ISIS become such a threat?
Well, one of the things that ISIS has done better than most of these jihadist groups is it's opened up battlefields in multiple countries. So it's played a very important role in the Syrian context. It's played an increasingly important role in the Iraq context, and it's used these countries as leverage to bring fighters, weapons, resources, including money, from front to front, depending on where they see an initiative.
Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, you've studied him. He and his group, ISIS, broke from al-Qaeda, or perhaps the other way around, earlier this year. What was the reason behind that?
Well, there were several reasons. One is the core al-Qaeda group in Pakistan, led by Ayman al-Zawahiri, was increasingly upset at some of the barbarism that ISIS was involved in, attacking Shia, some of the not just kidnappings, but the killings in both Syria and Iraq. But probably the most fundamental reason was ISIS's unwillingness to let go of the Syrian front. The core in Pakistan wanted to give that to Jabhat al-Nusra and to leave ISIS to Iraq, and they refused to abide by that that ruling from Pakistan. Therefore, they were kicked out.
So they disagreed on strategy and tactics, not necessarily on jihad or a larger Islamic vision.
Well, this is the organization, if we go back a few years, that when Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, before he was killed by American forces, was chastised multiple times for being too gruesome, isolating the local population with his brutal assassination. So there has been some pushback from the core in Pakistan on ideology, too much Shia killing and too much killing in general.
Al-Baghdadi reportedly was in United States custody for about 4 or 5 years at Camp Bucca in Iraq before that camp closed, and reportedly said before he left the camp, "I will see you in New York." I don't know how nefarious that was when he said it. What do you make of al-Baghdadi and the threat that he and ISIS pose to not only U.S. interests abroad, but to the homeland itself?
Well, first of all, it's not uncommon for most of these jihadist leaders, wherever they are, North Africa, the Levant, Iraq, Pakistan, to make these comments about the United States. The U.S., for many of these groups, is the great Satan. The question, though, becomes how much evidence do we see of plotting by Baghdadi and others in Iraq and Syria against the U.S.? And the concern there is that we have seen a growing use of networks for fundraising and recruitment into Europe. There was an assassination recently in Brussels by someone who had been trained by ISIS in Syria. So there are growing concerns about the external operations capability of Baghdadi and his organization.
And how many American fighters do we think there are right now fighting with ISIS?
Well, I would say we don't have great numbers right now. Estimates have put this at maybe over 100 Americans, but that's in Syria more broadly, and that's fighting for a number of different organizations. Probably in the dozens at most, though.
All right, Seth Jones, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jake.